Alright guys, today we are talking about the PlayStation 5's SSD technology once again because we have another developer saying some really positive things about the SSD inside of the next generation consoles and really emphasizing how big of a difference it's going to make for game designers and next generation games, which is always a great thing. And we're also going to be talking about the DualSense controller once again because we have a developer from Supermassive Games giving their input and letting us know some of the things that they could actually do with some of the features that the DualSense controller is going to offer. So before we get into it, if you could do me a big favor and leave the video a like to help it out, and be sure to hit the subscribe button as well so you don't miss any future content. But I do want to let you know right off the bat that the article we're reading from in regards to the SSD technology, it's a little bit misleading. The title says Halo's co-creator says PS5's SSD tech will make a huge difference for designers. And if you actually read the article, which we're going to do, you will see that the Halo co-creator never explicitly points out the PS5. Instead, they're talking about both next generation consoles. However, I do think the reason why the article highlights the PS5 is, I guess their justification for it anyways, because the PS5, as we all know, has the more advanced SSD tech. It is the faster console, and Sony put much more emphasis on the SSD with the PS5 than Microsoft did inside of the next generation Xbox. And so I'm not saying it's necessarily right. I mean, obviously they wrote it this way because seeing Halo co-creator emphasizing the PS5, yeah, that makes it a very clickable article. So I just wanted to highlight that. I'm not going to sit here and make it sound like they're just praising the PS5 and not saying anything about the Xbox, because that's just simply not true. But we do have to acknowledge the fact that on paper anyway, yes, the PS5's SSD is very advanced, and it is, I guess you could say, the greatest strength that the PS5 has over the next generation Xbox, whereas the next gen Xbox actually has that compute unit advantage. So let's read a little bit here. It says the creative director behind the original 3 Halo games, ODST and Reach, has said PS5's high-speed SSD tech will make a huge difference for world builders. PS5's SSD has been positioned as Sony's headline feature for next generation, with architect Mark Cerny calling the storage drive a true game changer. In a PlayStation 5 hardware presentation last month, Mark Cerny claimed the drive, which is said to be able to load 2 gigabytes of data in 1/4 of a second, could fundamentally change how game developers build their game worlds. Instead of hiding environments behind scenery or lengthy corridors designed to mask load times, PS5 developers will be able to create far more expansive environments without fear of memory issues. At least that's what is being claimed. The Xbox Series also has a custom SSD, however, its raw throughput performance is said to be half that of the PS5's. Marcus Leto, the former Bungie art director behind the expansive battlefields of the original Halo, has said the SSD tech is something he's excited about. It will make a huge difference, Leto told VGC. It will open up the door for more expansive content that can stream a lot faster. Players won't be waiting on load screens, and we won't have to hide loading behind cinematics and that kind of thing. It will just help make things a lot more seamless and fluid for the player when it comes to their experience on those consoles. I am really excited about that because that's one of the things that's really hard for us in particular right now, dealing with those old platforms. These platforms have been around for what, 7 years? Developing for them is like developing for machinery in the Stone Age, and obviously he is referencing both the PS4 and the Xbox One when he's talking about the current platforms. In the PS5 talk last month, Mark Cerny claimed the SSD gave game designers freedom to no longer design worlds with twisty passages and 30-second elevator rides intended to obscure the load or the game loading new environments. Leto said this kind of smoke and mirrors world creation was something he was very familiar with. It's second nature, he said. I guess one of the benefits of having been in the games industry for so long is that it's second nature to build environments with some boundaries around it and understanding the memory limits, draw distance limits, shader overdraw, that just comes second nature. So that is the entirety of the article, and obviously, as you can see here, the former Halo developer doesn't explicitly mention the PS5's SSD, but he really is talking very positively about the SSD technology in both consoles. And so you, I guess, could put 2 and 2 together here and assume that, just like many other developers have been saying about the SSD and the PS5, it is going to be, as they're saying, a game changer. And You know, I'd say the most relevant quote from the Halo co-creator here is the fact he's saying it's going to make a huge difference. And I think this is important to highlight because I've noticed that because the SSD is probably the PS5's greatest strength, obviously a lot of PlayStation enthusiasts, people who are very excited about the PS5, have really been hyping it up and paying close attention to what developers have been saying, because there's a lot of other people who are trying to make it sound like when it comes to the PS5's SSD, or just the SSD technology in general for both consoles, it's not going to make that big of a difference. The only thing it's going to do is allow for better or faster load times, or maybe even no load times, which is awesome in itself, but that's pretty much the extent of it, or at least that's what they want you to believe. But listen, we have many developers, and not just developers. I've been actually taking a lot of time here on the channel to highlight many different things that not just developers are saying, but very tech-minded people who understand the technology fully behind the PS5 and the SSD specifically, and they've all been saying the same thing. It is a literal game changer. There's going to be things done with these SSDs, specifically the PS5s, that you're just not going to see done anywhere else. And there is a very good reason why, when Sony was creating and kind of coming up with the PS5 and its architecture, there's a very good reason why they put so much emphasis on that SSD. Not only is that what developers were asking for, I mean, we've talked about this many times before, but the developers in particular, they're coming out here letting us know that, yeah, this is going to be huge for games in the future. And so I understand why a lot of Xbox fans need to get defensive, because they're like, look, you have the weaker console, just accept it. We have more compute units, we have 12 T-flops, we have all these other things, and that's fine. And I'm not saying that there aren't developers praising that as well, because of course there are. But I think what's become very clear here is that you see both Sony and Microsoft kind of going in different directions when it comes to the overall philosophy of these consoles. And at the end of the day, they'll probably both be able to achieve similar results, but some games may have greater strengths and weaknesses, depending on how they utilize each console's specific technology, or how they take full advantage of it, I guess is the best way I could word it. So I just wanted to take some time to highlight this, because yes, we do have the Halo co-creator here, a former Halo developer from Bungie, talking very positively about the SSDs going into next generation. And so yeah, I mean, we've been hearing a lot of developers talk very positively about these SSDs, so I'm just going to be very interested in the long run to see what exactly they're going to be able to do that I'm not really thinking of right now. I'm hoping anyway that I end up feeling kind of wowed and surprised by seeing what some developers and creatives are going to be able to come up with. But moving on from that, we're going to end this video by talking a little bit about the PlayStation 5's DualSense controller, because we have a developer from Supermassive Games actually giving us a little bit of insight as to what they hope to achieve with some of the features that were announced for the DualSense controller. And I find it pretty interesting, because there's no doubt that Sony is packing this controller with a lot of different features, and I have a feeling that more game developers this time around are going to want to take advantage of those features, more so than what we saw with the DualShock 4. At least that's my hope anyway. But speaking to Game Reactor, Pete Samuels, managing director of Supermassive Games, expressed his excitement for the DualSense, stating that its tactile features could make players feel more attached to the characters in a game. Obviously, it's really exciting for us. As you say, we've had some experience not just with Until Dawn, but we spent a couple of years working in VR and making some games in VR, and got to play with some stuff, including voice control in one of the VR titles that we did. So yeah, we're excited. We like new stuff. We like trying to design for new stuff. You mentioned the PlayStation 5 DualSense controller and its features, and we've been having some chats about that for a little while now, about how we're going to use that. The whole tactile thing, as much as we can transfer what you'd expect the character's experience to be directed back to the player, I think the better attachment you feel to the characters. The voice controls that we did before were VR, so it was first person, so it made a lot of sense to actually make your choices using your voice, because it was you in the game. In the third person perspective, it perhaps makes less sense, but we're already having some discussions about some things we might do, some things that we might incorporate into the game, having seen the announcement of the DualSense. So basically what Pete Samuels from Supermassive Games is saying here is that he believes some of the features that the DualSense is offering, the way they could incorporate it into their game is I don't know exactly how, but I guess with the tactile features, they could make you feel more attached to the characters in the game or the character you're playing as. And they also mention voice controls, and we know that the built-in microphone is there with the DualSense. So yeah, it's going to be interesting in my opinion to see what developers do. I'm very excited about the PlayStation 5 in general, but the more features that are announced, you know, things like the feature set inside of the DualSense controller, but also again referencing that SSD inside the PS5. These are all things that I'm incredibly excited to see what developers do with them, and based off of everything we've heard, it seems like developers are very excited. Again, these are creative minds, and they're going to be able to achieve things and do things that we honestly can't think of ourselves, and will end up surprising us. I guess my big hope with the DualSense controller specifically is that developers really do try to fully utilize it, because there are a lot of features here, and I just don't want to see a situation where only a few handful of developers really take full advantage of them. Hopefully, if gamers like the features enough and they respond positively enough to them, developers will feel more incentivized to try to take full advantage of them. But that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. I hope you did find it informative. If you did, be sure to leave it a like. Make sure you leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all of that. But until next time, guys, take care.